Welcome back to Big Up, where today we are going to discuss some dollar bin beats from my recent eBay huge lot of about 60 records that picked up off of eBay. There's an unboxing video if you're interested in seeing it. Um, a link in the description, of course. But let's get started. So first, we're going to start off with Formation Records, 1999. I think this probably had a better sleeve than this at one time, but I've got came with the paper sleeve, and we've got two tunes here: Twisted Individual and Rayner, Twisted Individual music, and Rayner Emperor. So this was part of the world of drum and bass releases that were kind of coming out at that time, and the idea was DJ SS, who owns and runs Formation Records, was kind of picking tunes from different parts of the world, and it's a cool idea. I have a couple of the plates from the different world of drum bass stuff. Not all of it is my cup of tea personally, but I love the idea. This one starts out with Twisted Individual music, from Wales. Twisted Individual was, the prankster of drum and bass for many years. He kind of was a goofy guy. He named his tunes absolutely absurd things. He kind of was known for partying. He had a couple really big hits. One, the one that comes to mind right off the bat is Bandwagon Blues. And that was a huge tune. But in my opinion, it hasn't stood up to the test of time. I kind of was a big fan at that time, but that was my jump up phase. And this music song doesn't hold up at all. I mean, this came out in 99, and it is a kind of proto of what jump up became in the early 2000s. And this is a pretty early release for 99 for this style of jump up. It's really heavy on the mid bass and kind of squelchy stuff, and it kind of it lacks kind of the sub bass that I personally really enjoy in drum bass, and goes for a lot more mid bass and leaves out some of the sub to kind of get that mixed down sounding right. And it just didn't date well. As part of that, I'm not trying to slag on Twisted Individual. I haven't always been the biggest fan of his music personally, but he was passionate about this, and it was a big thing for him. And good on him. The B-side is Rayner Emperor from China. I couldn't find much on Rayner. I don't know if he's from China or if it's just like a tune that's inspired by China. I hope it's somebody from China. So the B-side's a little bit more tech-steppy, kind of reminds me of Moving Shadow, Ed Rush and Optical, Bad Company style that time. Not a bad tune. Not a great tune. I personally, even in the dollar bin, if I really wanted to get a bunch of Formation stuff, I might pick this up. But I think this is an easy pass. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Next up, we have some Universal Project. This is the second release on Universal Project's own label, Universal Project. So kind of dug back into Universal Project when I pulled this one out, and was amazed at how many of his tunes I recognized, because it's not a name that instantly pops up for me, but he had some great tunes that were even released on Virus. Got stuff that was mixed by some of my favorite DJs back in the day, Stacka and Skynet and Diesel Boy. While I don't listen to those DJs as much these days, they aren't my cup of tea anymore. These tunes are proper, like, late 90s, early 2000s. This tune came out in the 2000s, so it's reminiscent of that. Tech Step, it might have fallen victim to the fact that Tech Step was getting really kind of tired at some point. Personally, I think both these are pretty good tunes. I would pick this up from the dollar bin. I would pick I'd be happy to get this in a lot of records off of eBay, which I am. I would even play these out especially if I was playing like a retro tech step. I think it actually fit really well in a retro tech step. Haunting is like, sounds kind of late 90s Renegade Hardware. Relentless is once again the same kind of sounds. It kind of hard to describe. Heavy Reese's, real heavy tech stomper breaks. Not anything that's going to be super memorable. Like, even if I was doing it, I might pass this in my collection and not think twice about it. Probably not one that's going to get pulled off the shelves a lot, but I do think it's a dollar bin beat for sure. Like, this is something that is worth, $2-3 picking up if you see it on the cheap. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 to me is it's definitely worth your money. But a 3 out of 5 to me is worth picking up on the cheap, but it isn't the greatest dollar bin beat I've ever gotten. Next up is Back to Basics, DJ Spice, the porn track. So DJ Spice exclusively released stuff back in the day on Back to Basics. I think he's moved on since then. From what I could see, he's still releasing stuff today, but I haven't really seen him in, the stuff that I've been following. The porn track instantly harkens back to me going clubbing and being drunk and having someone drop this track, which I knew of from me following Back to Basics back then and thinking it was hilarious. Well, like many Back to Basics records from this, it is the type of jump up I don't like. It is, the porn samples aren't that funny anymore. I mean, like, you could make a good porn track and a track that's sampling porn, and I just don't think this is it. It's that same early 2000s jump up stuff that's a little flimsy, too much mid bass, not enough sub bass. It's kept, the song structure was kept really simple to try to get people to dance to it very purposely. Just hasn't aged well. That style of track just hasn't aged well, and I wasn't a huge fan of it back then in the first place. And the B side is even more forgettable. Like, just clearly something that DJ Spice produced and was something he wanted to release, so it got a B-side, but it has nothing special about it. It was completely unmemorable jump up. If you, like, to me, this is, like, straight up a 1-star. I'm kind of glad to have it in a collection because I have a distinct memory of this track, but I'm never going to pull it off the shelf. It's just going to be kind of sitting there. So I'd pass on it unless you have something, you've got that weird memory of it or something like that. Next up, we have this awesome Great Shape EP, full EP. Got both the records in there. From On Architecture, which is DJ Ink's label, which is kind of known for a lot more experimental drum and bass, by Mindmachine, who is actually a pseudonym of DK. I really dig this EP. I think that this right here is a must buy. Super heavy sampling. Reminds me of, he literally samples, oh man, my brain just went blank. Chuck D and Public Enemy. But it's got that same sampling style. Real phonetic, constantly changing up. All whole tunes based out of sampling. Like, you don't hear these style of tunes anymore because you can't get all the sample clearances. I mean, this thing is filled with samples. It's got Apaches and Chuck D samples and all sorts of stuff. The production on it and the plates both sounded super clean and loud. I think that this would be fun to drop these days, like today. All 4 tracks. Really good. A little bit on the experimental time for 2000 release. The art's pretty cool, reminiscent of graffiti. I dig this one. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5, and say that if you ever see this in the dollar bin, you should grab it. Very good. Last up, we have Dispatch number 14. You know, back, I always kind of thought of, so I thought of Dispatch as kind of like a B label for a very long time. You know, now it's a powerhouse in drum and bass. It's one of the biggest labels in drum and bass and continues to just release amazing music. They've always, but kind of Dispatch early days, just kind of signed some weird artists and released kind of some stuff that was kind of emerging stuff. And this is kind of early in the Dispatch catalog, and you can feel it. And there's even a signing on here, which feels like them signing an emerging artist, which the idea of that is super cool. And Ant TC1, who runs Dispatch, is still doing that today, and I think it's super cool, and I applaud him for that. This one is In Hutch by Q Project, and then the B-side is Fever from RAF, as in RAF and Illogic. The A-side, In Hutch, it starts off with this high-pitched stab that is so grating to me that it lowers my rating of this record. After the drop, it removes that sample or that synth, and it gets a lot better, and I don't hate the rest of the tune, but I would never play this one out just because I wouldn't want to listen to that high-pitched squeal in the mix at all. Like, it really grated on me. It's not a bad Q Project tune. It's a little bit forgettable overall, and like the most memorable thing is something I didn't like about it. Fever, on the other hand, by RAF, it's not amateurish. That's not the right word for it. It sounds early. It sounds like RAF is still learning how to master his craft of drum and bass. And I think RAF and Illogic together have mastered drum and bass. They make amazingly gorgeous drum and bass these days. Now, at first I was like, this is okay. But for whatever reason, this one kind of sat on my record player, and I kept putting it on, just, kept listening to it. And the song really grew on me. Well, I think it's a little amateurish as an overall production. Amateurish isn't the right word. It just hasn't reached its full potential. But I kept going back to it, and I ended up really kind of digging this song, which kind of levels out the In Hutch. As far as would I buy this one in the dollar bin, I would. I think owning an early piece of Dispatch is kind of cool. I ended up really liking, especially after multiple listens, Fever by RAF. But I'm only going to give it a 3 out of 5 because I don't think I would pull this out to play at a party or to put in a mix ever. It's a decent listening song. It's a cool kind of artifact of history, especially at a good price. So this one's going to be a living on the shelf for a long time, but it's not going to get a lot of play out. But I would, if I didn't have it in my collection, I think it's definitely worth spending under $5 for. Anyways, that's the records we're going to talk about today. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What type of records do you want me to review in the future? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. All right, talk to you later.